I've played tons of NES games. You hear me talk about them all the time because it's one of the libraries that I genuinely enjoy. I've covered a lot of topics about them. I've talked about games I feel you should play and avoid, and occasionally I like to talk about things you might not think about. A long time ago, a really long time ago, I did an episode talking about the top 10 best-selling NES games, and many people brought up that they felt it was unfair for the console creator, Nintendo, to be mentioned. So that's the purpose of today's episode. Today, I'm going to be talking about the top 10 non-Nintendo, that means publishing and developing or maybe a mixture of both, best-selling NES games out there. Let's begin. Mega Man is a lovely franchise. To me, there really wasn't a better platformer-based franchise on the NES than what we would find with the Blue Bomber, and I'll die on that hill. To take the idea of creating a rock, paper, scissors effect, introducing a solid boss rush, and allowing for consumers to create new robot masters through a voting process, it's pretty impressive. Mad props to Capcom for allowing that to happen. It's great for business. But to be fair, Mega Man 2 almost didn't happen. Mega Man, the first one, was not commercially successful at all. It only sold about 200,000 to 300,000 units. Sales figures can be somewhat hard to find, but what we do know is that the US localization was handled fairly poorly. The box is trash, the game was not advertised well at all, and the success of the game relied on word of mouth. And because of Akira Kitamura, the director of the first game, begging the vice president of Capcom, he got permission to make Mega Man 2, which is one of the greatest games in the franchise. Much of what was scrapped from Mega Man 1 ended up in Mega Man 2, and with Mega Man 2, that fan influence I brought up was introduced, and many people do consider it one of the greatest games on the NES. To date, it sold roughly 1.5 million copies, and you can find it on a plethora of compilations. Really solid game. Sports games were very much hit or miss. Literally, there were so many issues that plagued making a sports game, and it boiled down to mechanics of the actual game, physics, and controls. Slowly but surely, as companies pumped out baseball games, we saw a formula somewhat evolve. We knew that fielding needed to be a big deal. We knew that we wanted to be able to run the bases and run back if a mistake was made. And we knew that we wanted to hit the ball a certain way. And thanks to Toze and Bases Loaded, that was possible. In the game, we can control one of 12 teams, which are all made up because this is the era that predated the licensure of the MLB and the MLBPA, but I feel to most people that wasn't even really a big deal. People just wanted to play a solid, great baseball game. Now to me, I'm not a big fan of this one. I much prefer the second, but to be able to charge the mound, control the zone by which we bat, and have a phantom floating catcher's mitt, this game had it all, and I appreciate that, and others did as well, which is why it sold 1.58 million copies to date. Everyone knows what rage games are, games that are so stupid hard that they cause you distress and make you look in the mirror questioning your conscious existence. Trust me, fucking been there. And to me, Ghosts and Goblins on the NES personifies that experience. It's so blisteringly unfair, and that's the way that it's always been. It started off as an arcade game, and as such, when it came time to port it to the NES, Capcom entrusted the biblically accurate representation of failure, Micronics, to handle the development, and it shows. The hitboxes are weird, the music is kind of The whole game experience is an exercise in tedium, and hoping that the programming doesn't fuck you over. But I would be a fool to not say that as a difficult game, it is very much a rite of passage on the NES, and you have to beat it with 2 loops. I could have easily said no, fuck this, and moved on to something different, but I had this weird, strange desire to do it again. After all, I had fought all the way there, what's one more time? And while I did beat it using save states because the red armors are total assholes, I enjoyed completing this one. And it set me up for my favorite game in the franchise, Ghouls and Ghosts, on the Genesis. This game was very successful though, selling 1.6 million copies during its run. This game is awesome. Everything about it is amazing. The music was well thought out and represented the TV show well, And because it was a platformer, Capcom brought out the big guns from another popular Capcom IP to handle it, Mega Man. They even brought back in Keiji Inafune, the artist for Mega Man, to help out with the design of the game. I'll be honest with you though, if you ask me the most memorable song in the NES library, Moon from Ducktales would be there, and I've never played that game all the way through, but I do look forward to doing it at some point. In the game, we play as Scrooge McDuck, going around the world finding treasure, bouncing on enemies with our pogo stick, and ultimately trying to get the best ending, which changes depending on how much money you acquired through the game. That wasn't common back on the NES. The whole idea of multiple endings, only a handful of games did that, and Ducktales was one of them. To me, Ducktales proved that Capcom could do amazing things with Disney IPs, and this game kickstarted a solid line of games. DuckTales 2, Chip 'n Dale, Darkwing Duck, they all kicked ass in their own unique way. DuckTales sold a little bit more than Ghosts and Goblins at around 1.64 million copies, and if you get a chance to check out the remake, you should, it's just as fun. Top Gun was a badass movie. I like to think out of all of the military movies I've seen, this is probably my favorite. Was it Tom Cruise? Was it Kelly McGillis? Was it the Righteous Brothers? Was it the volleyball scene? Only God knows, because only God can judge me. But it was a badass movie nonetheless, and with it being a solid plot, it was ripe for the picking to be picked up by someone and turned into a video game. Believe it or not, the first company to do it was Ocean. Of course it was. It was either going to be them, LJN, or Acclaim. And guess what? That game sucks. But the people who made the second Top Gun game, they were known. Konami. In the game, we control a F-14 Tomcat, one of my favorite fighter jets, and we go through 4 missions. Through and through, this felt like Konami looking over the shoulder of someone playing Afterburner and saying, I can do that. Better. And they did, but they made it packed to the brim with nonsense. If you can survive the onslaught of literally every plane ever made coming your way shooting what appears to be bullet bills at you, you'll likely lose lives on the landing sequence or the refuel sequence. But hey, for what it was dope. It was an epic company, and they ended up making $2 million in sales from it. Got another baseball game here for you. Now, I will say baseball games themselves have historically been very hit or miss to me. I could use more colorful words, but for the time, the attempts to bring sports to the home console, they weren't too terribly bad. Football, soccer, hockey, basketball, and baseball all needed to have their specific rules adapted to a tiny little gray cart, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for people who tried to do it. With baseball games in particular, I found that the main things I looked out for were quality fielding and quality batting, and Namco had been pretty damn good at that for a little while now. You might be like, what do you mean Namco? Well, on the Famicom in Japan, Namco had a series known as Pro Baseball Family Stadium. The proper name is Pro Yaku Family Stadium, and they wanted to port it to the US regions, and who better to do that than Atari. Atari put in the arcades as Versus RBI Baseball for the Nintendo Versus system. It was basically a proof of concept. Once Atari created their shadow company Tengen, they published it to the NES. And unlike a majority of the games from Tengen, this is one of 3 that were officially licensed. It was their period of actually playing by the rules before becoming a thorn in the side of Nintendo. It sold about 2.05 million copies during its lifespan. RPGs are a big deal. The ability to be something you weren't the day before and invest time and effort into creating your character or making him or her more powerful, it's rewarding. But the early years of RPGs and JRPGs, they were strange. It all started with pen and paper, which paved the way to games like Ultima and Wizardry, of which the latter impressed Yuji Horii so much that he wanted to create a Japanese version of it, with the objective of creating a new franchise. But he wanted to go above and beyond. Not only did he want a new franchise, he also wanted new ideas for people to enjoy. Thus, Dragon Quest was born. Now, the first one was just as successful as the previous 2 games, but in America it was published by Nintendo, so it's disqualified. But the sequel, it was published solely by Enix and sold roughly 2.5 million copies, which is awesome. Now, I don't want to really get into the story because JRPGs are very story-driven, but I will say it carries over the good, the bad, and the ugly from the first one. It's one of the hardest JRPGs you will play, guaranteed. and unlike the first one, we do have a party to control. It makes me wonder if they saw Square do that with Final Fantasy and thought, "Ah, Kusa!" Probably. Wouldn't surprise me. You'll always see developers try different things with their games as the franchises progress. It's a surefire way of making sure that the gameplay is fresh. Otherwise, you end up with Mega Man and its 150 variances of the same fucking thing. No offense to Mega Man lovers, but Capcom's been doing that for a long time now. Look at Street Fighter 2. But Dragon Warrior 4 was an example of a drastic change. Instead of one large narrative, we had 5 distinct chapters, each of which have their own protagonist or group of protagonists. If you manage to play the remake, they even add a 6th character. The more you know, right? Many people consider Dragon Quest IV to be one of the greatest RPGs on the console, and by breaking up the chapters, it kind of gives you this deep look into exactly who these characters are. It's refreshing to say the least. Dragon Quest IV sold 3.18 million copies during its lifespan, and there are a few different ports of it, if you don't want to play the NES version. Well, we're going back in time. Dragon Quest 1 was tedious, 2 was hard as fuck, 4 was revolutionary, so what was 3? Is aight. It's the finale of the Erdrick trilogy where we play as the hero trying to defeat this douchebag named Baramos. Again, I don't want to get into the story, so let's talk about mechanics. In 3, you could choose your teammates. Wanted some warriors? You could. Wanted a thief? You could. To me, the job system in 3 influenced other games massively. Hell, even Final Fantasy V, if you want to be ambitious and believe it so, was inspired by Dragon Quest III. It's a damn good game if you're into Dragon Quest. So far, I'm not really convinced, but selling 3.89 million copies, that's only 1 million less than Dr. Mario, so props, Chunsoft. You deserve to be on this list. I made a conscious effort to avoid pack-ins in this episode, but there's a reason why those games sold so much. They were bundled with the system. A game like Super Mario Bros., Duck Hunt, a combination of the two, world-class track meet, there are a few to mention. But the one game that was packed in that Nintendo had nothing to do with was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was all Konami. More specifically, its shadow company, Ultra Games. Now, TMNT was a huge deal, a comic book series created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, one that took the 80s and the 90s by storm. Even if you never watched the show or saw the movies, you knew about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're a badass group of Ninja Turtles. What the fuck else do you want? Now, I will say Konami knocked it out of the park from the get-go with this franchise. The arcade game was awesome. And I'm sure people seeing the fact that they could bring that game home for their NES was a mind-blowing experience. Speaking of which, if you did have that experience, feel free to let me know in the comments section below. I thrive on hearing about your experiences throughout the years and how it felt to see this for the first time. I do read and respond to every comment, even the mean ones. Now, we all know the reputation Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles carries on the NES. It's hard, stupid hard, incredibly unforgiving. Most people complain about the electric seaweed, I complain about the Technodrome, but what do I know? I'm just a boy. TMNT during its run sold 4 million copies, and to this day, still remains as one of the best-selling Konami games in the history of the company, and that says a lot. And that's it for today's episode. What did you think of this list? Do you feel that these games deserve to sell as many as they did, or perhaps you own some of these? Feel free to tell the community down in the comment section below. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home with us. We're a gathering of video game enthusiasts that love to remember when life was just a little bit easier to live. And if you align with that, feel free to subscribe. Finally, the single most important thing you can do for me is to hit that thumbs up button, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre out.